All right, guys. Self-experiment results time. You know, N equals one. I'm only one person, but this kind of stuff has been repeated enough. I'm just sort of dialing in variables in order to create the situation to demonstrate what can occur or what's happening. Um, we had an awesome opportunity pop up, so I wanted to take advantage of it, and that's the why of having done the experiment. But I think a lot of people would wonder why I went into keto. Like, obviously, I'm training for a marathon. I'm still working out in the gym, but why would I go keto? And I answered it a little bit in the preview video, but uh, there's a lot of metabolic benefit to switching to high fat and forcing your body to operate in that environment. It's an energy system that we don't get a lot of practice in. So I like to a couple times a year sort of periodize it and go into keto, operate high fat, force my body to use its own fat stores for energy and use external fat sources for energy. This is only the second time I've ever gone into keto and actually kept the calories really elevated. So it's felt a lot different, and my blood sugars have been a lot different while in keto, especially this time, which is awesome. They've been really stable and just like sitting on the top end of normal when I wake up in the morning. So that's been really awesome to see. And where I used to go into keto, and this is kind of the adaptation thing, like I used to go into keto and I would have difficulty and I would have to start eating some sort of vegetable or something really early in the morning because my blood sugar was really, really, really low. Um, and that was just natural for me. It was, if I went to a doctor and told them that, they'd be like, oh, that's who you are. But that's not who I am. That's just where my body was. And so by doing this and practicing this and coming back into it every so often, I'm now at a point where that's not who I am anymore. My body's advanced and it makes the transition fairly easily. There are very few symptoms that I go through when I make the transition. And now my blood sugars are pretty stable, and my body handles it really well. So let's get to the experiment. Dramatic sip of coffee. The experiment design, I ran a route on Friday. It was not the same route, but I ran a route on Friday. Made it about 3 miles before I realized things are going to go south. Got another couple miles in before things really went south. And they declined very, very quickly. My paces dropped. My perceived effort was really high. The drive from my legs that I normally have it wasn't there. So I couldn't, just push and like use my strength, right? I didn't have that strength in the moment. It's hard to describe that feeling, but it's like I know it's there, I just don't have access to it. So it almost feels like somebody else's body because, I know I'm capable of this, but for some reason I can't do it. And that happened to me on Friday, and then it happened again on Tuesday. I took the opportunity Saturday and Sunday to do lighter things, less intense things that would allow me to stay in motion, but not force me to use much strength or intensity. So Tuesday, I went out and I was like, you know what? We'll just do an easy or moderate run, 140's heart rate to start, and then kind of hang out there. Now, in the heat, when it's really, really, really hot, there's a lot of weight loss. So I actually lost just under 8 pounds in that run on Tuesday, which is a full gallon of sweat. So afterwards, I had to replace that sweat. And most of the time, people will blame it on the heat. They'll blame it on the lack of salt or something like that. And that does come into play. It is harder to run faster when it's hot and maintain those effort levels. But one of the things that really piqued my interest was in the beginning when I was hitting the hills and I wasn't really that hot yet. I would hit these little hills and I'd have to slow down. Now, normally I hit these little hills and I dig into the muscle a little bit. And I get to the top and then start to cruise again. I'm like, yeah. Couldn't do that. I would hit the hill and I go to dig in and I didn't have access to it. So I had to slow down. And that's not normal. Normally I have that strength. So this is a really interesting dynamic for me in that moment because I'm going, wow, I have very little carb in my body. I'm coming off a rest day and 2 lighter days. So I should be relatively fresh. And I know my body has put some carbohydrate in the system because you always maintain a base level. So my liver's got some glycogen, like the muscle has a little bit of glycogen in there. My body's replenished that for sure from the proteins and veggies that I'm eating. But I don't have access to it. So something is shut off, right? And not allowing me to go to that level. So, because at that moment, I don't have the adrenaline. There's no adrenaline pushing me into that state to really burn it. I'm just going out for a moderate run. So I noticed that and I thought to myself, I think if I had that carb right before the run to signal that it's here and I'm about to do work, I think I could gain access to that without the adrenaline. So that was kind of test number 1. And then as I'm cruising, I got to that 3-mile mark and started to feel a little already. And then mile 4, mile 5, same kind of thing. And on this route, that's when it starts to turn into a little bit of an uphill. It's like the super gradual thing. There's a few little like FU hills but a bunch of little gradual uphills as I'm coming back. And so naturally I'm going to be a few seconds slower on these little guys, but it shouldn't be tanking. And after mile 5, I tanked and saw like major downgrades. Now, I know that I'm conditioned for the distance. This is something I do regularly. And on 2 different routes, 2 different days, one of them well recovered, I'm tanking. Yes, I sweat out a lot. That has an effect. But also being low carb, it looks like I'm running out of my energy stores, right? And just banging into a wall. So taking that into account, I decided we had another really, really hot day the next day. So I'm not going to replace any more water. I'm not going to replace any more salt. I'm not going to change any of that stuff. I'm only going to carb up for this run and see what happens. And there's 2 things I'm looking for. Well, actually 3. 1, do I have better access to the muscles when I hit the hills in the beginning, like to kind of power up them a little bit? Do I regain that access? So for CrossFit implications, a lot of times people will go keto and they lose their power in the gym. And we talk about pre-workout carbohydrate. One of the reasons we hit that pre-workout carbohydrate is for better access to the strength that we already own. We just need to have access, right? So I'm looking to see if I've got access to that strength when I need to power up the hill. 2, I'm looking to see if I can buy miles with the carbs. So if I put the carbs in By the time that I run out of my natural carb stores that I'm maintaining while in keto, am I going to buy extra miles at the same pace rates or similar rates to perceived effort from the start of the run? And the third thing, I was actually looking for whether or not I would stay in ketosis throughout the evening after having had all of that carbohydrate to support the workout. Because the prevailing notion inside of the world of ketosis is that if I have carbs, I'm going to get bumped out of ketosis and it's going to be a struggle to get back in. So I sat down with the data last night and I looked at everything, and it was really, really, really interesting. First of all, the run went beautifully. I was actually having difficulty holding back a little bit in the beginning, but I knew with the heat and build up and whatnot that I kind of had to. So I went a little bit faster in the beginning and then ended up coming back to center. But the entire run paces were pretty consistent with where they needed to be. And I ended up averaging about 50 seconds per mile faster, basically finishing at the same perceived effort and pace as I started with. It was only mildly more difficult at the end, and I'll show some of that. But the final mile 9 into 10, that one has two like really big hills. So it was kind of cool to see that play out, because I was talking before about not having access to the strength to get up the hills. And on Tuesday, when I hit both of those hills, man, I had to pull back so hard in order to get up the hills. And there was a connection actually between the heart rate and the effort I was able to access. So if you look at my heart rate for the run on Tuesday, it kind of came up and I got to a certain point and then stuck there, and I didn't really have the ability to go much higher. It all averaged out at this one certain point, and I didn't have access to anything greater. Even if I wanted it, I just didn't have it, and that's why my pace kept falling. So my pace was falling to meet the effort that I had access to. Very interesting. And so as I was dehydrating, I was actually losing access to paces. Wild, right? But on Wednesday, as I was dehydrating, my heart rate was allowed to go up. So you can see a steady increase in my heart rate as I'm losing water. But I'm maintaining pace because I have access to what I need in order to burn, to keep pressing the strength into the legs to stay on pace, despite what's going on with the other aspects of my physiology. So there's still a whole lot more at play than just the carbohydrate, but this kind of gives you an idea of how the carbohydrate is playing into things, right? So it gave me greater access to my strength immediately, just having had the carbs before I went out to run. There's a little incline and uphill that I start with, and I had more feel of power going into that. And then I hit a little downhill, and then there's a little FU hill. That little FU hill was my telltale sign. I hit that and, leaned forward, pulled with my hamstrings, and my hamstrings were there. They drove me right up the hill, and I was like, yes, okay, this is a good start. Part of the problem, though, is when you do that, you actually burn more carb. So I was a little bit worried that I was going to hit the hills, dig into some of that strength, and then burn through the carb too soon, right? Now, the other interesting thing is that I ended up more dehydrated in yesterday's run than I did in the run the day before. I think that's because I started off a little bit lighter. I didn't I wasn't able to fully replenish on Tuesday. So coming into the second run, I'm carbing up, but I'm less recovered because I had the run the day before and we had 60 something power cleans, or was it 60? Yeah, 60 something power cleans and 30 snatches, all at 115 to 155. 115 on the snatches, 155 on the power cleans, which was super aggressive. And so coming into this, like, I should be tired. I should be wasted. I probably shouldn't be able to maintain the paces as well as I did the day before. But I did. And the carbs made the difference. And even coming out of it, I was 1 pound lighter. So from Tuesday's start weight, I had a 9 pound water loss. That's insane. That is some serious dehydration. We're talking 4% dehydration. And at that 2 to 3%, you start having performance losses. So yeah, pretty wild. Awesome results. I'm gonna post up some of the actual data to show you how it played out. And you can see the heart rate differences. You can see where I got stuck and where my body was allowing itself access to the additional heart rates. And then you can see the differences in the paces as well, where I was able to maintain paces. And what was really cool is, I hit that 10-mile mark, and then I've got this little stretch before I get home that's kind of flat. And on Tuesday, there was absolutely nothing in my legs to even, it was like, can I get to my mailbox? Please, I gotta make it to my mailbox. Just keep your feet in motion until you get to the mailbox. And on Wednesday's run, when I hit that little stretch, I was like, I wonder if I can get back to speed. And I actually got back to speed. Because I crest the top of a hill, hit 10 miles, and then nice and flat to the mailbox. So coming up that hill, I power up it, I use those hamstrings, and am I recovered enough at the top of that little hill to actually get back to speed? And on Wednesday, after being carved up, I had it, and I got back to speed. And you can see that last third of a mile, I got back down under 8 per mile. It's 7:46. But the day before, it wasn't even close. You can tell it was like I was just dying to get to that mailbox. So yeah, pre-workout carbs are massive. If you don't want to pay attention to your daily carb versus fat intake, you want to just eat some cake and donuts to get to your calories, or you want to eat a bunch of dark chocolate to get to your calories, and you still also want to have a good workout, you need pre-workout carbs, because you want access to your strength. And having access to that strength is not only going to make you feel better, but it's also going to help you extract more from those workouts and come out of the workouts in a lower stressed state. So something I haven't even talked about yet. On Tuesday, I did my run, had some food afterwards. And then I went to the gym, did a workout that got me into the 160s, 170s for 15 minutes. And then went and helped a friend move. And I immediately replaced 70 something ounces of liquids and put salt in there. But throughout the evening, I started to develop a dehydration headache. I started to kind of feel weak. And I was having conversations with people, and I can apologize to Matt right now, because I know we were in a conversation and I'm zoning out inside of the conversation. And I can feel it happening, but I don't actually have control over it in that moment because I'm wasted, absolutely wasted. Now going into Wednesday, I carved up, came out of the run, I had the exact same meal and made the exact same shakes or type of liquids to drink before I went to the gym. And then we did another workout with, a little bit of heavy weight, and I think it was like 17 minutes of 160 to 170 plus, which was just nasty. And walked away from it feeling okay. And I actually had a little bit of a sauna session last night too before I left the gym, which, would dehydrate you a little bit further. So just a little extra liquid replacement to account for that. But that's kind of part of the heat training and endurance training and whatnot. Never once did I have that brain fog last night. Not once. Inside of the workout, I kind of felt a little, but I was working really, really hard. But I never had the brain fog, so I was much more supported going into the evening. And the only thing that I changed was pre-workout carbs to support the work. That's it. The rest of the day was full keto, full fat, protein, the works. So when we're talking about pre-workout versus post-workout carbohydrate, if you go into your workout and, those 4 to 5 miles, like, I'm telling you, I started feeling it at 3. And that's at a heart rate of 140 to 145. Maybe getting up around 150 when it's stupid hot and I'm pretty low on water, so I'm dehydrated, right? Naturally, your heart rate elevates when you're dehydrated. So if you're looking at the data, and I started feeling it at 3, at 8-minute miles, that's 24 minutes of work, moderate work. The higher your heart rate, the more intense the work, the less time you actually get till you feel that way, till you run into that wall. So if you're low carb and you're going into these intense workouts and you're 15, 20 minutes into a workout that has that kind of heart rate level, you're already hitting the wall. You're already putting yourself in a stress state where you're actually not getting enough out of it. So when you're talking about like CrossFit and carbs and things like that, you can absolutely be keto. You want to go Orange Theory and do and do keto? You want to run and do keto? You want to do this and do keto? Target it. Targeted keto is the win. You just put the carbs before the intense workout. What do you do on a rest day? You don't have them. Leave them out. Don't worry about them. You don't need them, right? Because we're not doing any crazy work. So we're just going to let the body live in this high-fat environment. It likes it anyway. So post-workout replenishment is great, but if you're already in an environment where you're high fat and you're low carb, you want those pre-workout carbs to make sure that you get through your workout and have access to all of the strength that you deserve. And you can get as much out of that workout as possible, and you lower the stress level of the workout itself so that you don't overflow your stress bucket and you have more capacity for the rest of the day to give to your family, to give to your friends, to give to your work. Because who likes to be irritable at work, right? Nobody. Pre-workout carbs, man. They work wonders, even when you're lacking them in your everyday. And they will be best always pre-workout if you want to get the most out of your workout and have the most capacity for the rest of your day. Have a great day, guys. Another successful self-experiment.